What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. How are we all getting on? So Ulster University win their first Sigerson Cup since 2008, and what a game, what a performance it was from Ulster University, and what a story it is for them coming out on top, winning the Sigerson Cup, their 6th in total and their first since 2008. We're going to break down the game, review the game a little bit in more detail. We don't always get time to discuss Sigerson Cup games on this channel, just by the fact of the amount of matches that are around in Gaelic games, especially in January and February when you look at club games, county games, football, hurling, just so much going on absolutely everywhere. But I have kept up to date with the Sigerson Cup, even if I haven't always been uploading videos on it, and considering the result last night, considering the performance from both teams really, who I think actually played fairly well. I think Ulster University just came out, blitzed UCD very early on with those 3 goals, and UCD just left themselves, unfortunately, with way too much to do. And they were quite slow out of the blocks, UCD, as maybe many people had anticipated, given the fact that they were favourites coming into this game. But yeah, look, fair play to Ulster for getting the job done, getting the result, getting the victory. What more can you say about the Canavans at this stage? I mean, Dara Canavan in particular, an outrageous performance really from him. 5 points in total in the game. Do you know what it is? Like, I think when we look at the best footballers in the country right now, I think everybody would be in agreement that David Clifford is probably #1. You know, I think when you're looking below that, like, especially in terms of forwards anyway, I think Shane McGuigan and Shane Walsh are 2 of the best forwards in the country. But I think Dara Canavan really is now putting his claim in there to be possibly in the top 3 forwards in the country, especially when you look at the form that he is now producing. Because the thing about Dara Canavan that always stood out to me, you know, from watching him, was that very jinky, very like quick, explosive player. Probably just didn't have the output in his earlier years, like in the last like 1 or 2 years. And in many ways that makes sense, because he's a new player, like coming into Tyrone. He's still young, he's still learning, he's still adapting his game. His body's obviously going to become more and more physical the more like he gets older, and he's going to fill out a lot more, and that will help, I think, you know, more so going down the line. And now you can start to see the outputs are there. And the thing is, like, he's kicking off his left, he's kicking off his right. Like, there really isn't like that this man cannot do. And some of his points taken, his play, his ability was absolutely phenomenal. And obviously his brother Rory Canavan, like, you can't discuss the Canavans and not discuss Rory Canavan, because he was outstanding as well. 4 points. And you know, I think the thing about Tyrone is, I think people have looked at Tyrone sort of in the last year or so, and you see players opting out, you see players not making themselves available, and you see maybe some issues behind the scenes with Tyrone. But the Canavans, when they are at it, like, they've got 2 phenomenal players there, both very young. And I think for Tyrone, like, if you can find more younger players to sort of adapt with the Canavans, I do think Tyrone have a serious team there, regardless of the amount of players that are missing. And yeah, like, fair play to Ulster University for coming out the blocks, getting those goals, very explosive, and then very well organised in the second half just to shut UCD out. In terms of UCD, like, there certainly were a lot of disappointments. So, like, only 2 scores from their starting 15, and considering they had beaten Ulster University by 8 points earlier on in the competition. Yeah, like, I mean, Dara Craig was very impressive, 9 points. David Garland with 5 points as well. And I think Monaghan do have something to look forward to with David Garland, in fairness, in terms of this season, and you would expect him to come more and more so back into Monaghan the more the season goes on. It was just a little bit of flatness about them in the first half. Reminded me a little bit of UL's performance a couple of years ago in the Sigerson Cup final, where they struggled to get going in the final. And I don't know, maybe the favourites tag doesn't suit teams in the Sigerson Cup. It's very hard to know, but they were a little bit slow, and I think they just caught, you know, they just got caught. Like, and that was the thing, is that Ulster University with 3 goals to put up a 9-point lead at half time, UCD were always leaving themselves way too much to do. And the problem was, going into the second half, was that, like, when the gap is that big, there's always going to come a certain point in the game where UCD are going to have to start going for goals. And in many ways, that makes the opposition team's life even easier, because they can shut up shop even more. They know that conceding points is not that big of a deal. And I think for UCD, you could see, you know, they were overworking balls, they were overworking plays, maybe getting themselves into holes at times, and then getting picked off on the counter-attack. And ultimately, that led to the sort of downfall of UCD. And look, that was because of the gap that was there, and that was because of the great work that Ulster University did in the first half. I think you have to credit Niall Loughlin as well. Like, big performance from him. He obviously gets one of the goals. Ushi McCann and Ben McCarran obviously getting the goals as well. in the first half. And Niall Loughlin, like I think we've said before, Derry do have a player there. There's absolutely no question about it. And I think, you know, there is a lot of sort of older, well, I wouldn't say older players, but experienced players in Derry that we're very used to right now in terms of Shane McGuigan, Brendan Rodgers, Chrissy McCaig, Conor Glass. But there is that younger crop there in Niall Loughlin, in Cormac Murphy, Owen McAvoy, Ethan Doherty. And I think that is, like, that's very positive for Derry because, like, there's probably been an argument maybe from some fans that Mickey Hart coming into Derry is just to try get one last squeeze out of Glass, out of Rodgers, out of McGuigan, so he can try and kick on and win that All-Ireland. But you've got this other crop of younger players that are coming through, and I think that bodes very well for Derry, in fairness. And ultimately, another thing that struck out from like watching this game and seeing Ulster University obviously win the Sigerson Cup, mainly is the fact that Ulster football right now is in such an incredible place. You look at it, all three All-Ireland winners in club football, junior, intermediate and senior, all came from the province of Ulster. When you look at the National Football League, like all the Ulster teams have started very, very well, and like there is you would maybe say a slim chance, but there's definitely an opportunity for there to be 6 Ulster teams potentially in Division 1 next year, and maybe even 3 Ulster teams in Division 2. Like, that's the best case scenario. If Antrim and Down get promoted in Division 3, you would say one of them is definitely getting promoted, in my opinion. Maybe Down are slightly favourites, but I think the result of that game this weekend will let us know even more. Fermanagh are looking very strong in Division 2. I think they'll be fine in terms of staying up. It's going to be very hard to catch Donegal or Armagh in Division 2. And then you're looking at Division 1 and you're thinking, what Ulster teams are going to get relegated, if any of them get relegated? Maybe Tyrone, Monaghan maybe might be there. But I think Monaghan will be fine. And I've said that in previous videos. I think they'll be perfectly okay. And I think Tyrone have the quality, in my opinion. They definitely do, in terms of how good some of their players have looked at the start of the league, in terms of Dara Canavan, Rory Canavan. Kieran Daly's looks very good as well. Some other younger lads coming through. So I think Tyrone have enough there, in my opinion. The problem with Tyrone is just the inconsistencies. So, like, there really is a strong chance that you could have 6 Ulster teams in Division 1, 3 Ulster teams in Division 2, and like you just have to credit the province of Ulster for how well their teams are doing right now, how well their teams are performing. And then you obviously have the Sigerson Cup winners, who Ulster University, obviously hailing from Ulster as well. So, like, it is quite extraordinary what's happening so far in 2024 in terms of how well some Ulster teams have performed. Like, I think the only Ulster teams that have lost so far this year are Monaghan and Tyrone. And Monaghan lost to Kerry, and Tyrone obviously lost to Derry. So Tyrone lost to another Ulster team in the province. Like, someone was bound to have lost that game unless it was going to be a draw. So again, it just puts into perspective how good the Ulster teams are right now. And it is interesting. Like, I think when the competition is so good, when you have so many strong teams, it does raise the standards. It raises teams, you know, it raises the standards of teams around you. And I think we saw that, for example, in hurling. I look at the Munster Hurling Championship, so competitive between all 5 teams who were in there. Obviously Kerry play Division 2 hurling, but you look at the other 5 teams, like, obviously Limerick are by far the best team, but on any given day you feel like anyone can kind of beat anyone, and it's so competitive. And I think it does raise the standards. I think the reason why Limerick have become so good is because they've had to get to the standards that were set, you know, in previous decades by the likes of Cork and Tipperary. I think Cork and Tipperary have had to raise their standards recently because of how good Limerick are now. I think Clare have had to get even better and look to improve. And I think it's something that the other provinces, in particular, in my opinion, Leinster, should really look towards. I know Dublin are so in front, so it's very, very hard for other Leinster counties to really sort of get up to grips with how good Dublin are. But I think a lot of sides in Leinster, the likes of Meath, Kildare, Westmeath to a certain extent, even Wexford, should look at what is happening in the province of Ulster and say, what are they doing that we can't do? Because like the standards right now in Ulster, you could argue maybe, are as high as they have ever been. Now, I think, look, Ulster, there's been one All-Ireland winning team in Ulster since 2012, and that's obviously been Tyrone a couple of years ago. You know, I think you'd probably want to see a few more All-Ireland wins come out of that province before we can really start to say that Ulster, you know, is definitively number 1. But at the same time, you look at 6 teams in Division 1, and possibly 3 teams in Division 2 next year. It could happen, and I think it is massive credit to those Ulster counties, in fairness. Because obviously the work that's going on behind the scenes, like there must be some amount of work that is going on behind the scenes. And I know like hurling isn't really a big thing in Ulster, like in comparison to football. Like fair enough, Antrim, Derry and Down all play it to a certain extent, but certainly not at the levels of football. So maybe that is a bit of a benefit. But look, getting back to the point, huge congratulations to Ulster University. Tremendous performance, 3 goals in the first half, clung on brilliantly in the second half, did very well defensively to keep out the attacking threat of UCD. And yeah, from a UCD perspective, flat a little bit in the first half and probably didn't live up to the favourites tag and just got caught like a lot of teams have been against sides from Ulster this year. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the game in the comments down below. I think man of the match would have to be Dara Canavan. Absolutely outstanding, 5 points on the day. He was kicking points on his left, points on his right. He was setting up plays around him. He's in the absolute form of his life right now, and I think he could very well be the difference for Tyrone in terms of them having a very good season this year and maybe not having a good season. Because if he's at it and he continues these levels and performances that he's putting in, I think it could be a very, very big year for Tyrone. I really, really do. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. My name is Aaron, and I'll see you all soon.